Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Humans of Wharton podcast. Today, we have a lovely guest and a lovely guest host. Our guest today is Isabel Greiner, and our guest host is Eleanor Assa. And so I'll go ahead and introduce Eleanor as our esteemed guest host. She's had an extensive career in the makeup, beauty, cosmetics industry, having worked for many global beauty brands, including Estee Lauder, back in New York. And she's been in many roles, including forecasting, marketing, digital, and sales. She is a mother of 3 boys, and after having taken a break from the workforce, she's back as Chief Marketing Officer of Iconic London, which is a glow-giving, ratings-boosting makeup brand. So without any further ado, please meet Eleanor Assa.
Hi. What an intro. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy to talk about all things Isabel. We really should have met before business school, but it took Wharton to bring us together. And I'm so grateful for the friendship, support, guidance that she offers me all the time, from professional to personal. So she has an amazing story, as many of your guests, and I can't wait to be part of telling it. So thank you for having me.
Here, Elle.
I love you.
Oh,
Welcome.
Isabel, what leads you here today? So tell us a little bit about your life pre-Wharton.
Sure, I'd love to. I think, so I was born in Germany, just outside Frankfurt. And at the age of 8, my dad was transferred to New York, and we moved to New York. So I went from living in a super small town of maybe like 10, 20,000 to living in Manhattan. And I grew up in New York, spent another year in Germany just to have an adult experience back in my home country in high school. And then I stayed in the U.S. for university, because I think an American education, including a Wharton education, is an amazing education because it gives you so much freedom to really explore all of your interests. I went to Brown, which had no core curriculum, which is perfect along those lines. And then I spent 5 years working at Estee Lauder in marketing, much like the lovely Eleanor. We both come up from a beauty background. And in 2002, I decided to go to Wharton to pursue both the Lauder program, because it sort of ticked my international aspirations. Being German, I chose the French program, just really interested in meeting other people who had an international background like myself, and was looking to go into consulting after Wharton. So that's the trajectory leading up to Wharton.
What I want to know, Isabel, is not only where you came from, but where you are going. So I would love you to tell everyone about what you're currently doing, because it really is super exciting, and it's professional element, but it's been your heart and soul for quite some time.
Yeah. So actually, the funny thing is, I got to this project due to an introduction through Eleanor, believe it or not. So for the last 2 years, I've been working on a project to launch a cosmeceutical line. So I've been working as a freelance consultant for 5 years. And of those 5 years, the last 2 have been spent specifically on this project and back in the skincare range, which is my original love. So my first 2 years at Estee Lauder were spent in skincare, and of all the product categories in beauty, it's always been my favorite because it's super scientific and has all the fun and of marketing and beauty, but also, really challenges you from a more intellectual perspective. So we are looking to launch in the US as a digitally native brand starting in April of next year. Fingers crossed. April 1st, on April Fool's Day, that's my launch date, is a 5-product line that we're launching with. We have a patent that has been submitted in the US we're trademarking our name right now. The name of the brand is going to be Intuis. All the products are made in Switzerland, and we have ongoing experiments in a partnership together with the University of Zurich. It is really differentiated from other skincare brands because it's more of a focus on skin health rather than anti-aging. And so we're really looking at our key ingredient is cell active. The product needs to be refrigerated in order to retain its efficacy after 1 month at room temperature. And it is really about helping your natural processes repair your DNA as you age. So it's preventative as well as reparative. And super exciting. So we can't wait. There's a few competitors on the market, but no major ones. And we're really looking to take on some of the big brands that have historically, what I call the heritage brands, have really used science almost in a, I want to say, condescending way to the consumer. So been very focused on, don't you worry about it. You won't understand. Here are these super complex things we've developed in a lab. Trust us, give us 300 euros and you'll be brand new. This is really about saying this is for your own wellness. So even though there's a lot of science involved, it's actually wellness as well. So I find that a really interesting dichotomy.
And in case anyone was wondering, when Isabel and I get together, which is pretty regularly because we're both in London, our conversations go from like my 7-year-old who's a petri dish of bacteria and what cold he has to her cosmetics line to, the latest news that we were debating political issues. So this is something we love and we go from subject to subject. And it's just so much fun to hear more from Isabel about this brand and what she's doing. And I'm so excited about it. But in the middle of all of this, she also had to deal with surgery and, rehabilitation and everything. I mean, she is seriously superwoman. It is incredible. So Isabel, I think you might want to, as this is Humans of Wharton, I think you have to tell your story and what you've been through in the last 6 months.
Of course, Eleanor. Thank you for that. And thank you for your kind words. I really am. One of the things that I think, because this is Humans of Wharton, I think when we first go to Wharton, you sort of lay out your life plan. I certainly did. And when I said I went to Wharton to go into consulting, I thought I was looking, that was going to be the zenith of my being and everything was going to be perfect after then. And this would be, the top of the mountain. And then you realize there are many more mountains that stand before you. And some of the things that are a little bit, they're little bumps in the road. And actually, all those things give you a platform to be able to handle things that come into life unexpectedly and handle, some challenges and give you the flexibility. And so for me, it's been, so like Eleanor said, I had surgery this year. I had open heart surgery. I had mitral valve repair in January in the middle of launching this project, which, like I said, I've been working on for 2 years. We had a little bump in the road there too, where COVID sort of put a kibosh on it for about 6 months. And then when we started off last November again to really start to plan for our launch in 2022, I realized that I would need this heart surgery in the middle of a pandemic. And that I still wanted to stay on to become CEO of this brand and still wanted to launch it on time. So how was I going to do all this? I managed through it. So the surgery was on January 21st. Our Wharton colleague, Dara Pauker, actually took over for me for 3 months while I was in rehabilitation. But this is going to sound a little bit... this is where the human part comes in. I think for me personally, the biggest lesson of all of this, of my ordeal was, well, 2 really important lessons. When faced with a challenge like this and you have the ability to do research, like a good Wharton student and like a true consultant, you have to throw yourself fully into it. especially with cardiac thoracic surgeons. Often you will get a lot of people who talk down to you because there's a bit of a God complex, and especially to a nice blonde. And I was told by many heads of departments not to worry about it, just to trust them. They would take care of the process. I ended up doing real professional due diligence. I went to 6 heads of hospitals. I interviewed them each twice on Zoom because it was COVID times and you couldn't actually speak to them in person. I made a 25-page PowerPoint deck on my post discussion evaluations. I mapped all of the parameters of my echocardiograms from the last 10 years. So I get them 6 monthly. I map them out in order to really ascertain whether or not, according to the European guidelines, it was really timed for surgery based on where my parameters had moved. So I had to know for myself. And I also had to really understand, the functionality of the heart, what the implications were going to be. I had several doctors tell me that if I didn't get surgery in the next, couple of years, and they couldn't really give me a specific timeline, that it would take 10 to 15 years off of my life expectancy. And that, given the fact that I lost my mom at 75, we won't say how old we are, but we all know we're pushing 50. That is a pretty scary prospect. If you say, 75 minus 15 and you're at 60 and you're like, oh my God, this is completely different from, my everyday woes where like, I wanted this job or I wanted that job, or you have. And so I ended up getting extremely lucky. I did all the research. I found one surgeon in New York City who was able to do it minimally invasively. That means that 4 out of 6 of the doctors wanted to do a sternotomy right down the middle. And I just thought, this is not for me. I kept digging. I kept looking. He was not the most famous heart surgeon in New York City for my condition. He was not the person that my cardiologist recommended. My trusted cardiologist of 10 years. So it actually took a huge amount of trusting in my own research, because I'm so logical, and my own, listening to myself. And basically at the end of the day, I said to myself, like, I can always try it minimally invasively. I'm 46, and then I can do a sternotomy later if it doesn't work. And so I did this. So I chose this French surgeon in New York. If anyone on this podcast who listens to this needs to know anything about mitral valve repair, they should please get in touch with me. I feel extremely lucky every day that I was able to find somebody to do it minimally invasively, not just from a beauty perspective, but I think this is actually really important. From the fact that psychologically, it has been proven that many people of heart surgery suffer from depression afterwards. And I am convinced that part of it is that getting sawn in half is psychologically quite a traumatic thing. So I spent 1 night in ICU and 3 nights in hospital, and I have tiny scars and I don't even think about it anymore. And it's been 9 months. So psychologically, I think it's really important just in terms of your physical being staying intact. The second thing is, I think that I was very lucky. My surgeon showed me the camera video of my repair. And I think this is important too. So when you have an operating report, he did 6 or 7 things within the 5 hours that I was on the bypass machine. And he showed me each and every single thing that he did, fast forwarded through the camera. And what was incredible about that is I know, because I've seen it with my own eyes, that I'm perfectly fixed. So I have no trepidation doing anything because I've seen that it's all good now. So those were 2 really amazing experiences, takeaways from that experience. And the final one is, I feel extremely lucky that call it midlife, I had the opportunity to really take the time to think through what's important to me, and, reflect on my life. Am I happy with what I've done? What else do I feel like I need to do? What are the things, you feel like you want stop, start, and continue, or whatever. So I think that that's a really big blessing, and it gives me perspective and direction. And it also gives me, perspective as I'm trying to be the head of a CEO of a startup. I mean, we can all work 14, 15, 16 hours a day. So it gives me perspective. And then also the reflectiveness, like I said, of, what's come before, was a gift. And, even when I was 25, and the same is true today, I always said, for myself, I want my version of an extraordinary life. And what that means, and my sister always laughed at me, what's extraordinary? Extraordinary, it's ridiculous. But for me, that really means you live, you love, and you have some great stories to tell when you're 85. And, I sort of took that moment at 46 before I walked myself into that operating room. And I was like, okay, I feel good about that. I've lived, I've loved, I've worked really hard, and have some great stories to tell when I'm 85. So that's.
And I think also, I would also add that, having been alongside Isabel for much of the journey, obviously not on every spreadsheet and every call, I just think her bravery was incredible, because I've broken bones many times through horse riding accidents and so on. And I've been scared. And in that situation where you're like, I just want the best guy, girl, doctor, specialist, whoever to fix me so I'm okay again. And, taking the time and not freaking out and being so methodical and brave has been such a lesson to me. And, those hours where she was in surgery, I was counting the minutes. I was waiting, and her sister was going to text me. And, it is quite a big deal. And that bravery is pretty awesome. And I think she, as a human being, is just somebody who has been an example to her friends on an ongoing basis of courage, perspective, passion. I mean, I always say this about Isabel. There's, or as my kids call her, Auntie Zaz. She's got probably the biggest heart of anyone I know. And she's just an incredible friend. So I thought it was really important for people to hear that story, because it was a huge lesson to me. When the expert and doctor says to you, do this, do that, you think you're invincible when you're in your 20s. When you, start to find that there are some issues or some family, history, it really is important to do your research and use all of the skills that you have, because I work a lot with techie people, and I have a friend who's a super big techie, and he's always like, if they can't explain it to you in 5 sentences or less, then they don't fully understand it, because you're capable of understanding it. So I do think that about experts in general, and Isabel definitely has inspired me to have perspective and take time. So I'm super proud of her.
Oh, thanks, Elle. I mean, and I think that is, like I said, the biggest lesson I can say is you should take the time to do your research, because many people will try to scare you into different. I mean, I have many horror stories of having heads of Mount Sinai, heads of Weill Cornell scaring me into their version or their method. And so it's not easy out there, but if you have, head support, obviously on the Zooms, but it is definitely worthwhile doing your research. And like I said, a gift too, in some ways, to take the time to be reflective. My dad was my nurse for 2 weeks afterwards. It was the cutest time I've spent with him ever. So, there's a lot of positive things that come out of these things.
Yeah, I would love you to talk a little bit about your family. Isabel's mom and dad are the most amazing people, and her mom sadly passed away, but her father is just a rock star, and her sister is awesome, and she comes from this amazing family. So I think it's worth hearing just a little bit about your family, Isabel.
Oh, thank you. Yes, like Eleanor said, my mom sadly passed away 6 years ago now. And I think that too, by the way, was a huge lesson and a huge gift in some ways, which sounds a little bit odd, but um, it, you know, that too is one of those moments where you get the opportunity to spend real quality time with your family, to have, to grow together. It also is, I think, the first time, and this shows that I've been super lucky in my life, for which I'm very grateful. The first time I didn't win, you know. So I know we always talk about failures, especially in like, work interviews and stuff. And I was like, I know I can fix this, I'm going to fix this. And, big lesson in life, like it just doesn't always turn out the way you were exactly planning it. Because everything in my Wharton and my previous life had said, if I work hard enough, it's going to be okay. And so, all of my friends who've lost parents say, this is when you grow up. And I think, and this is where, just like my heart surgery, this is a moment where you say, it's time to grow up. Life is finite. Do the things you love. And out of that, so my mom was amazing. From her, I learned warmth and elegance. My dad is, I won't say how old he is, because if he ever sees this, he would get really mad at me. But the most incredible thing about my father is probably, for me, he's had an extraordinary life. He came from a very, very small town in Germany, and he has continued from from being a young man to now being open to change, open to learning, loving to get to know anybody, meet people from new cultures, etc. And that has been that thirst for knowledge, that thirst to like meet people from different places, to like just connect. That my dad, like the pandemic has been the worst for him because he loves to connect with people. That's his thing. He's an extreme extrovert. But most importantly, and this is incredible, he constantly says to me when I say, oh, Dad, maybe this and that, he goes, I'm going to do my best. I'm willing to change. I'm going to, so he is always, I'll work on it. His answer is always at 80 plus. His answer is always, I'm going to do my best to change. And that to me is exceptional.
But he's also just the most enthusiastic person. So like you talk about change, I don't think he has to change at all. So if he hears this, I think he's just one of the most incredible, energetic people I've ever met. And Isabel has that energy. Like every time I see her, the enthusiasm, the excitement, my kids are like running when she comes in the door. She gives the best hugs. She's just a total rock star. And I totally see her dad in that because when we arrive, we feel part of the family and we hang out, and he's just such a interested person. Like I think one of the things he's passed on to Isabel, which I benefit from incredibly in our friendship, is like his passion for the arts and for music. And I also think that's something really Isabel can talk quite a bit to. And she's my freeze buddy quite often. So we enjoy discovering new things. And I think that that's something that has driven Isabel quite a bit in her life and in her passions. And I think, Isabel, I'll hand over to you to chat about that.
Perfect. Thanks. I mean, my dad's mantra, which is beyond just being somebody who's always evolving, which I think we all should strive to do, has always been learn, earn, and return. And that is really I've sort of grown up with that and lived with that. So, I've only really recently realized how much this is part of my core DNA. Like, I really believe in education. I really believe in hard work. And I really, really, truly believe that if you have the possibility to help others, that you should do that increasingly as we move on and turn, like the percentage of time you spent on either, will change over your lifetime on either any one of those three fronts. But I have been inspired by my father and have actually this year taken on a return opportunity, which is to join the New York Philharmonic as a member of their international advisory board. I'm super excited about it because I'm going to be surrounded by the most incredibly international people. We have a lot of people from Asia as well as from Europe on the board. It kind of reminds me of my Lauder class in the same way that they are, sort of multinationals, so not at home in one place, but at home in many. And I also love the fact that it's exposing me to art and to music in a way that I haven't been recently. And I will learn and grow incredibly through this experience. So it's a bit selfish, even though I called it return. It's a bit selfish as well, because it is going to help me to really, when I say learning, it's not just, book learning, which we've all done, but this is learning into a different space. And the final thing I'll say on the Philharmonic is every time I go to Lincoln Center and I see them play, I always think it's a bit of a tiny miracle that in this world where, it's not always a pretty world, you get to sit in a room and you have all these musicians who have spent so many hours of their lives since they were, 5 years old, dedicated to this from all over the world. You have somebody who's from Korea, from Japan, from Russia. They've all come together in this room because of their love of music and their passion and dedication. It's like a tiny miracle of humanity for me. And so I'm super excited about, getting to know the musicians personally, and spending more time in that realm.
Isabel, first of all, amazing stories. It's so cool to see you talk not only about your successes, both on the professional side, but also, the personal side as well. This is what we're all about over here at Humans of Wharton. And I love the learn, earn, and return. That's something that I've never heard. I think that's a great thing to live by. On the learn topic, let's take it back to Wharton too. You've made it very far today, where you are today. What role did Wharton play in you getting to this point?
Sean, I'm so glad you asked that question, because I've been thinking about it over the last few days, and I've realized that Wharton was really has set the foundation for everything that came afterwards, because and has been such a strong launching pad and such a strong foundation, because it allowed me to move on to consulting. It allowed me to get my role at Bain, and the two of them together, and I really kind of consider them together. So I feel like Bain was also one of the best degrees I ever got, except I got paid for it at the same time, for two reasons, really. One is both of them really opened up my world. So through my friends at Wharton, through the experiences I had there, through the travel I did with my Wharton classmates, through the Lauder program, I say that I was international or multinational to begin with, but it really opened up my world in a way that I had not experienced before, that made me braver and made me want to go out into the world and made me really want to, like I said, I just want to travel post-COVID. Let's get over this hump. And I just want to see everything. I want to see everything. I want to be able to like take it all in. This is such an amazing world that we live in, and that we have the chance to be the people that we are, because we are very privileged, all of us Wharton students, Wharton alums. We have the opportunity to just take it all in. And I think that's an amazing thing. The second thing is, and I'll give you a good example. Bain did exactly the same thing to me. My first assignment was in Johannesburg, in downtown Johannesburg. And let me tell you, my dad had traveled to Johannesburg and done work in Johannesburg and was sure that I would have like an armed guard standing in front of my door, protecting me as I go down into downtown Joburg. No such thing. Bain gave me a rental car and said, go drive yourself into downtown Joburg. Even the people that I knew that lived in Joburg were like, you're not going into downtown Joburg, Blondie, are you? And I was like, they told me I should, and it made me so much braver and stronger for anything that came afterwards, because I learned, I think you have to live life unafraid. That's so important. And those two pieces, it gave me credentials and it gave me this openness. And the most important thing about that, Sean, is that it allowed me to have, remember how I say, I want to see everything, I want to do everything. It allowed me to be able to take gambles because they were calculated risks, because I had that foundation that I can always go back to. So even my amazing cosmeceutical, I've been working on it for 2 years. It's a very competitive category. Coming up with the next creme de la mer is no easy feat. But I'm fearless in it, because no matter what, I know even if it, of course it's not going to fail, but even if it went awry, I still have that foundation of Wharton and Bain that has given me so much credibility that I'll just go back to my freelance consulting and everything's going to be fine. There will be other opportunities. So is the biggest gift, because I never worry going into new situations, and I never worry that when a situation ends, that there isn't going to be a new one. And so I went down a mine in Joburg and drilled for platinum. I've sold pizza in China with Pizza Express. I did online gambling projects in London. I've done a myriad of things that are super fun, but they haven't been random, because they've always been couched within this very strong foundation. And that's super cool. That's such a great gift.
And I think, just to add to that, in every endeavor Isabel's pursued, there always seems to be someone from Wharton who she calls on and knows and is there. I've experienced the same thing. It's quite amazing to be part of that community where no matter where you are in the world, no matter what industry you're working in, there's usually some ex-Wharton friend to call on. And I think that Isabel's definitely experienced that quite a few times.
For sure. Actually, one of those people is a classmate of ours, Eric Kaku, who, when I was down in Joburg on this consulting project for 9 months and really looking for a friend outside of my Bain case team, because, it's fun, but sometimes you want to also have friends outside your case team. And he was working in Rwanda at the time. He's been a super, a big inspiration to me in terms of his consulting career. He's definitely a good example of learn, earn, and return. And he is also the person who gave me my first project when I decided to be a freelance consultant. And since then has introduced me to amazing people, one of which a friend of his in Ivory Coast, who I actually do I pro bono consult with her and mentor her in her beauty startup. So it's been a really nice, I think that's part of the strength of the Wharton community. It's a great example of that.
Yeah, Isabel, to that point, I think that's a really good thing to drill in on. a lot of the listeners today are Wharton alumni, and that's something, especially with the pandemic, we think about how to maintain our community and our network. Do you have like any strategies that you've maintained or you've kind of used to be able to maintain that Wharton community and network as you've progressed throughout your career post-Wharton?
I think always you need to reach out. So like Eleanor said, the more open we can be, the more we reach out to one another, especially it's been quite a few years since I think you just need to reach out to people, ask them questions, and use that community. I also think, like this example with, this wonderful young lady that I'm mentoring, it doesn't always need to be directly with a Wharton alum, but, you have these amazing experiences through the experiences of through their network. And that can be just super enriching. And I think and I think in the pandemic, we need to remember that, like, I don't know, I don't mind Zoom, actually. I think that, this woman, like I said, I've never met her in person. I actually would consider her a dear friend by now. So I think it is important, but we just need to be open and reach out and connect with people and, also share not only our successes, but also some of our challenges and struggles. I think we sometimes tend to be super competitive. I certainly am. I think that's probably one of my strengths and one of my downfalls in life. But I think it's really important to go to people and say, listen, I'm really struggling with this. Every time I've been in, the CEO role that I'm taking on right now, or even like the chief strategy role that I was at Pizza Express, it was my first time in a role of this type. And so, the more we can garner our network to help each other to sort of discuss challenges, the better. And I think we sort of maybe don't do that enough. I've thought about this. Strategy is the weirdest function because it's never a straightforward list like these are your to-dos. Every chief strategist is kind of making it up. And so and most likely will have people in their peer group who see them as a threat. So I always said, like, what if we got all the chief strategists of Wharton together and like they could talk about like what's worked, what hasn't worked? Like, wouldn't that be a cool thing? So this is the kind of thing where like I really think, especially when you're a first timer in roles, like what if you just had like, a chat and said like, this is the real deal. I know my title is impressive, but this is what I'm struggling with. I think that would be, and this is where I say like we have all this opportunity for support, but it also takes us being really open, not only about our successes, but all of our challenges as well.
I think everybody has different experiences in life, but I think what is so important, my CEO worked with me before and called me and said, we went through an unplanned sales because our owners are, have another brand that they sort of lumped us with. We're too small, but it really taught us that we needed an Eleanor. So before, very kindly, she said that. And before I start looking for an Eleanor, I wanted to ask Eleanor. But I think the point of the story is having the CEO who believes in you and having the friends who support you is important in choosing different paths, whether it is to take time out for family or to take time out to take care of a parent or a friend, or because you just want to have different experiences. But being able to re-enter into maybe something that you did before or into a different role really takes belief and support. And I think there's something amazing about the friends and female friends in particular I made at Wharton who there's no question that we can achieve things and that they support my decisions. And that piece of the community is also a really beautiful thing. And I think that as we become leaders, I think it's very important that we pay it forward and we make sure that we are open to different paths, because I think Isabel and I have both had in very different ways what anyone would deem a non-traditional path. But at the same time, there's so much that benefit that comes from that knowledge and, as you said, experience that is so transferable in terms of skills into so many different sectors. And I think as we are a Wharton community and as we become leaders and continue to be leaders, we do have a responsibility to give others that chance. And I think that Isabel does that in spades and has been really a massive cheerleader for me. So,
but Eleanor, I would also say back to what I was saying earlier, I love the fact that you say that I've had a non-traditional career path, because I love the fact that I've had a non-traditional career path because it has enabled me to have great stories when I'm 85 and a lot of different ones. But it is the community and the basis of Wharton and, like I said, Bain that has enabled me to be able to do that and still be successful.
The non-traditional career path. You said you love that it's been non-traditional. If we were to push you on that and ask, looking back at it, is there anything you would have done differently? And if so, why?
So I think this is a tough one. For me, I wouldn't have done anything differently. But I know that most likely, if I had stayed at Estee Lauder and done a 25-year career there, nonstop, including not going to Wharton, that I could have had an amazing career that many people would have probably, had a lot of support at Lauder. It was very much a home for me. I worked in 4 different brands. I got promoted every year. I was on a really strong track. An MBA was not necessary for that career path, but I wanted a more diverse life, not just career. And so I don't know what I would say to somebody coming out of university. I would probably tell them to become a growth marketer because Eleanor and I know those are so hard to find, good growth marketers. But I would say, for me, I wouldn't change anything, and I wouldn't definitely not change having had I go back to the strong foundation through Wharton and through Bain, because it's enabled me to go both ways. I could have, even after Bain, just chosen one path. But instead, I've really enjoyed the fact that I've been in mining and in gambling and in pizza and in cosmetics and in retail. And I don't know, I worked at Citibank for 5 years. I've really had everything consumer, but across so many different industries. And I've loved it. And I've met amazing people along the way. And I've, worked on 4 different continents. I wouldn't change it.
I have one thing that I would change for myself, but I think also for Isabel. It's not to stress in the transition and doing different things. Cause I think that is a killer. Isabel had these amazing experiences. I've had amazing experiences, but when you're in that transition moment, you're always stressed. You're always second guessing yourself. You're always thinking, am I going to regret this? And it almost, there's a bit of excitement, which is why you end up doing it, but you could make it a lot more of a pleasant journey if you were just believe that it will work out. As cheesy again as it sounds, I seem to be full of it today, but it really is enjoy the journey, because in between deciding to leave something and go for something new and try something different, the stress and, worry and, oh my God, have I made the wrong decision? And is this going to be okay? And what if I regret it? And, I shouldn't have done this. Maybe I should have done this. And questioning yourself all the time, which I'm very guilty of. And I know Isabel is as well. If you just took that out of the equation, the journey would be so much even, so much more pleasant and even better, because when you look back at things, it is often through, you remember the best bits. And I think Isabel and I both would say, if there was anyone at Wharton now listening or at the beginning, just go with the flow and enjoy the journey. As hard as it may be, everything happens, and you look back and you think, what else would I have done? I'm not going to change the choices I made, and they brought me to where I am today. So.
And I would add to that, Elle, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I've been thinking about the same thing. I think that one of my lessons, especially in the last 5 or 6 years, has been that, they say, like, when one door opens, another, when one door closes, another one opens. And it's not, or, my mom would have been like, maybe it's for the good. It's a good thing, because, something better is going to come along. It's not always that something better comes along, but something else always comes along. We are all very talented people, and every one of these experiences will help you grow. And challenges and failures not only help you grow, but I think they help you become more of yourself, because you actually end up, because the more you get knocked down and get back up again, the more you realize, like, you just have to do you and be, who you are, and good things will follow. And so, you're right. I've stressed way too much. I'm a worrier. And I would say, enjoy the moment. We all also, like at Wharton, I would say, like, for advice to students who are at Wharton today, like, enjoy the moment, take the most out of each of those moments. Because I remember, and I wouldn't say that I do this very well, but I remember being shocked at Wharton that 3 months into being there, we were sort of already, like, going to all those, like, open houses of different, like, banks and consulting firms and stuff like that. And I was like, wait a minute, we just got here. I don't even want to plan the next step. Like, let's just focus on the now. So I do think it's really important to just, like, in life, to just take time for the moment, and then know something else will always turn up. And if it's not exactly what you were hoping for, it's going to get you to a place where you'll learn something, you'll meet new people, and it just keeps going.
Amazing. Thank you, ladies. Like, I feel like I've just had an open heart surgery. You've opened my heart.
Oh,
well done, Elena. Well done. Complete this sentence. Wharton is a place where blank.
So for me, I mentioned this before, but Wharton is the place where my world was opened. So that's it.
Love it.
Thank you so much, guys. This was so much fun. Thank you, Eleanor. Can't wait to see
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, thank you to our guest host. You did an amazing job stepping in and guiding us through the journey of Isabel's incredible life and your stories. I definitely picked up a lot of things just from observing and sitting here and asking questions. I feel really grateful to have had this opportunity to speak to both of you, and definitely wishing you the best in your new venture with, I personally am not a big consumer of some of the products that you have, but I know that my girlfriend is. So I wouldn't be surprised if I see.
I'll teach you to contour and illuminate and highlight and glow. Don't worry.
All right. I mean, hey, I'm open to trying it. Awesome. I'm really excited to see what comes next, though, for that venture. And so thank you so much for sharing your story with us very openly and vulnerably.
Thank you guys for joining.